In this episode, I'm going to go ahead and deal with all chords and all inversions in harmonic minor. And the reason I'm doing this, and I'm actually going to go through my process this morning because I actually need the practice because I haven't done this in a while due to teaching, holidays, all kinds of other things. And the one thing I have learned about harmony is if you don't use it, you will actually lose it. Granted, there are some things that are easier to remember, stuff like 1, 4, 5 and all that. You don't really need to practice that a lot. But there's certain things that you do have to practice, from extended chords, polychords. Every single thing you learn, you have to repeatedly practice that, or you will forget it. And you mark my words, I guarantee the bigger your harmonic vocabulary becomes, the easier it is to forget things. So just sitting here, just kind of randomly playing, this is the reason we learn inversions. Because that's only 2 chords, an A and a D. Just using all kinds of different inversions, not even any non-chord tones. Let's do A and a D minor. So it makes it literally sound like you're doing way more than you are. There's not a lot of chords. There's just an A and a D minor, not even known on harmonic tones, just 2 chords. And this is probably one of the greatest gifts the classical masters gave us, is this ability to really stretch out the material of just a couple of chords. For instance, that was only 4 chords: an A minor, a D minor, an A minor, an E minor, an F, and an A minor. 4 chords in natural minor. So just doing that same procedure in root position on each chord, as opposed to you get an enormous more mileage out of your basic triad material when you learn how to use inversions like that. In the future, I'm going to make this downloadable. I have a whole ton of variations on just this one sequence. But again, we learn this so we can use to get the most mileage out of single chords. And also to give it some sort of motion, because when you do stuff like this, it actually sounds like there's motion involved. And it's just this. I did use a 7th chord, a half diminished, but there's 4 chords again. And secondly, I'm using typical formulas. So let's go ahead and start. It doesn't matter what octave you start this exercise in, but what you want to do again, and this is going to be the boring part, that's why I left all the other stuff there, where you want to call out the chords 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And then maybe do some like A minor, 3rd in the bass, D minor, root position, G sharp diminished, 5th in the bass, C augmented, 3rd in the bass, F, B diminished over F, E major with G sharp in the bass, or the 3rd. And before I go too far, you could actually use part of the sequence again, but let's just go around the circle of fifths, and you want to do the same process. You want to call out either the slash chord or the number that it represents in the sequence. 6, 2, 5, A major, 1, D minor with the A in the bass, etc. And you probably want to do it a lot slower than me. And the harmonic minor is a little bit more difficult because you're dealing with that augmented 2nd interval. Harder to do than major, that is. This inversion sequence. So there we go, D minor. So for a practical use, let's just give a practical use. Let's say you're in D minor. You might use some aspect of this sequence rising, like let's say you're a film composer. You want to establish some kind of mood. Using the sequence to bring it to close. So that's just, this isn't about piano playing or nothing, so Let me see if I could do a better version. So using it as a way to close out a part or create some kind of drama. So moving on to G minor, I'm going to stop calling them out. I'm just going around the circle of fifths. And also, I'm not going to do any more demonstrations, so if you want to do the rest on your own, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and do it myself. I'm going to also time to see how long this takes to go through that without all the messing around and the examples. And I jumped octaves there to... I've done this exercise 1,000 times, remember, so this is not a big issue. And trust me, you will get to that point where stuff like this actually becomes really easy to do. You will mess up sometimes. And that doesn't really matter, as long as you could actually find the chord and also be able to write it out. That's important too. And so I'll just go from G minor to C minor around the circle of fifths. Do the same thing. Really slow. Remember, harmonic practice should be done slowly too, just like learning how a complex part. You don't try to blast through it first, you just keep messing it up. Harmonic retention is actually better done really slow. You're not worried about piano skills. I'm not. I keep saying this is not my main instrument, and you should not be worried about it at all. In fact, this will probably help your playing out if you don't want to be a great pianist like me. I don't care about that stuff. I'm more interested in creation, but this stuff does actually help your playing out. And I'm just going around the circle of fifths. Mostly because just to show how important it is to do exercises like this. Harmonic exercises. Really important if you want, especially if you want a large harmonic vocabulary. Even the basic triad stuff still counts as practice. And on that point, I actually found it easier to make more complex chords when you know the basics of everything. It becomes really easy to make more complex versions of chord progressions. And the other thing about this particular sequence is it's very circle of fifth based. So if you ever get lost on what chord you're using in, like say, harmonic minor, you could always look at where it falls in this sequence. Is it the 4 chord? Is it the 2 chord? And then if it is like the 2 chord, you could go to the 5 chord. You don't necessarily have to do that. That's just something to try if you get lost. Because circle of fifth type of movement is actually really hard to fail at, especially in a counterclockwise direction. So I'm pausing for a second. I'm going to re-find where I was. That's another technique you can use to trip yourself up if you're really good at this. Look at the chord, see where it lies, what kind of chord color it is, and then move to the next chord. Trip yourself up once in a while if it's too easy. And I'm doing a lot of talking intentionally because you have the exercise right there in front of you, so you just have to move it around to different keys. But this is how easy you want it to be, to where you could probably talk through it. At least slowly. You can mess up and truthfully, see right there, I messed up. Speaking of, that's okay, go back and correct it. A little pause because I had to think for a second. That's okay too, as long as you can get through it. So we're just going to keep going until we're finished. And I'm going to actually time out when I'm done with this video to see how actually how long it takes, to do it without all the sorry, I'm thinking. I'm going to jump downwards. Still part of the same sequence. I was just octave jumping to make sure I can do that as well. From the last place I left off. Again, once something like this is fairly well memorized, just do it once a week or maybe once a month whenever you're good enough at it and remembering all these things. And one thing I say, most students I give these exercises to, they actually do find it very difficult to do in every single key. They actually underestimate how hard it is, or underestimate all this memorization, but it's very, very important. Especially if you don't want to be that person who's stuck in one key, favored key, then these things become super important, these exercises. And like I said, I have a whole ton of variations on this exercise that I'm going to make available for download soon, both in major, minor, and a bunch of modal progressions from other video series, all into one big book of chord sequences and exercises. And a lot of the variations use sevenths and extended chords and whatnot, so... But for this particular one, it's forcing you to use all these in inversions. Because of the way it's set up, it literally forces you to use every possible inversion of each chord. But like in the beginning, we saw the importance and how inversions can make you sound like you're doing way more than you actually are, even with just 2 or 3 chords. Which may help you get unstuck out of ruts of always like going to the same chords, the same root position maybe in 1, 4, 5, 6 type music or something. Still be able to use like 1, 4, 5, but in ways that you normally would not think of otherwise when you start using a lot of inversions. You start sticking non-chord tones in there and maybe even a little counterpoint, it really changes the way you feel about simple chord music and inversions. And of course, extended chords really will make it way more colorful as well too. So, or intermixing all that, basic triads with inversions, non-harmonic tones, counterpoint, and extended chords. And again, I'm talking to this on purpose. Because that presents a challenge to me, for one. To sit here and think about what chord comes next. So I have a little curtain that actually blocks too much light and just kind of flash past the camera. That's my high quality production in action right there. My overkill production. That's as much as I'm going to overkill. I'm trying to block light so it's not too bright on the keyboards. So one thing I'll never do on this channel is overproduce anything. Just get straight to the point. I actually don't see the purpose of like an overproduced video on music lessons. It just seems ridiculous. I'm going to go ahead and pause there. Think about what chord I'm on. Well, I'm going to stop. We got a D sharp, and we got an A, and an F sharp. So the 7 chord. Now I can go to the 3, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So, like I said before, if you ever tripped up on what chord to go to next if you're using harmonic minor chords, just try the ones in the natural order here. You know, the 7 can go to the 3, you know, the 6 can go to the 2 can go to the 5, that kind of stuff. I'm not saying every single chord sequence is going to use this strong of circle of 5th movement, but if you ever tripped up and wondering where to go next, maybe just try that move. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here because this has been a long video, and I think the total amount of time actually doing the exercise is probably about, I'm looking at the clock here, 13 minutes, 14 minutes. Not including what I'll put as an intro, probably, I don't know, maybe around 9 minutes. Enjoy the tedious practice.